The 10x rule, made famous by Grant Cardone, is effectively a growth principle in business that leads to multiplying your company's sales or growth by 10. Today I'm going to explain why fighters need to do these two things in order to 10x their fighting career. Today, we live in a war of attention. Every company and business is trying to compete for your attention, both in person and, more importantly, online. The UFC is no different. So being a great fighter just isn't enough anymore. You have to generate attention. Fighters need to put themselves out there as much as they can so that fans can buy tickets and tune in to watch them fight. Because that's what every promotion wants. The perfect example of this is Colby Covington. In 2014, he joined the UFC as an NCAA Division I All-American wrestler, which is the cream of the crop when starting out at the UFC. He went on to win 7 of his first 8 fights within the UFC. And before his fight against Demian Maia in Brazil, his manager told him that even if he won, he was scheduled to be cut from the UFC.
To hear someone tell me, hey man, we're not going to re-sign you, before I was going to fight Demian Maia, who's coming off a title challenge and ran through the division, won 7 or 8 fights in a row, and it hurt.
Because the UFC effectively said that he didn't generate any attention.
None of the fans care about your fighting style. No one cares about your personality. So I knew I had to make a change. I had to do something that was going to get the fans involved.
So after beating Demian Maia in his hometown of Brazil, he went on the mic and said this.
Brazil, you're a dog. All you filthy animals suck. I got one thing to say. Tyrone Woodley, I'm coming for you.
This generated so much attention online that the UFC decided to re-sign him after the fight. And he went on a successful run, which eventually led him to winning the UFC interim welterweight title.
He didn't used to do that early in his career. He was a hard-working guy who just went out there and fought his ass off, but people didn't give a shit.
I'm definitely not saying all fighters should go out there and do that, but there is definitely method to the madness. Look at the Google search results for Colby Covington throughout his first 8 UFC fights. Then look at what happened after Brazil. They can love you or they can hate you, but the reality is, if they buy tickets and tune in to watch you fight, then there's money to be made. The UFC is a business, and attention is the currency of the digital age. So if a fighter wanted to increase their chances of reaching the top, they need to be creating content, because every time they put themselves out there, it's an opportunity to be seen. Again, attention is the currency of the digital age, so you need to be stacking your P's. Now, if you do anything with any sort of consistency, you start to see results. Creating content consistently means that friends, family, some random bloke from Thailand will start engaging with your content. And this is the start of a community. Building a community generates attention and can literally 10x a fighter's career. If you don't believe me, let me tell you about Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. This guy is literally one of the greatest fighters of all time. But in 2018, that still wasn't enough to keep him in the UFC. The flyweight division at the time was considered being cut because the UFC just thought it wasn't exciting enough.
We've been talking about shutting down the flyweight division for about 3 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And after losing a split decision to Henry Cejudo, the UFC made a deal with One Championship to trade Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson for Ben Askren. He went on to have a successful career at One Championship, but what I love to see is that he managed to turn his love for gaming into a massive online community. Mighty Mouse started posting gaming videos on his YouTube channel in 2016 and has now built a community of over 800,000 YouTube subscribers. He now gets to leverage his experience in the fight game into the content that he puts out. From interviews, breakdowns, and just general commentary on the MMA space, I have no doubt that his community is now a source of revenue for him, through YouTube monetization and brand sponsorship from brands like OnlyFans, PrizePicks, and G Fuel. So if there's anything to learn from Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, apart from a suplex to armbar transition, is to put in the time to building a strong community so that fighters can benefit during their career as a fighter and after. You could literally be one of the greatest fighters of all time and still get cut, or in this case traded, from the UFC. If a fighter did these two things, I have no doubt it will 10x their fighting career. How do I know this? I know this because there's literally a space built on these two concepts, and it's called influencer boxing. Jake Paul is an amateur level boxer. Elle Brooke is a porn star and an amateur level boxer. They are making significant amounts of money, and it's not because of their fighting skills. They're in these big fights because they generate attention and have big communities behind them. In my opinion, they're gimmick fights. But 60 million people tuned in to see Jake Paul fight Mike Tyson, and Jake Paul is reported to have made $40 million from the fight. And this proves that generating attention and building a community at scale can 10x a fighter's career. Sharing and documenting the journey by consistently creating content won't just be great to show the family and friends when it's all said and done. It supports fighters on their journey to becoming the best fighter they can be. There are so many examples of fighters today that are doing this really well. So if you have one that comes to mind, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button as well whilst you're there. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you at some point soon.